Start. All right. I believe we are now live. Let me see here. Looks like looks like we are. So, hi everybody. This is a new experience for me because I have not previously, here we go, where I have not previously scheduled the live stream. I just started it. And we are good to go. So this is our bonus episode of After Scientology, straight up and vertical, because we just got the Danny Masterson verdict in. And Tony Ortega was there. Tony, welcome to my live stream. What a day, huh?
Yeah, I just rushed back to where I'm staying and immediately got set up to talk to you. I didn't want to attempt this down at the courtroom because the equipment's just not very good for in the field, and I just wanted to that drive was helpful for me, helped me think about some things.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, a lot going on. We've been anticipating, but then when the moment comes, it's like, oh my God, it's happened. And all the stress and all of the worked up, about this is now kind of over. He's guilty on 2 of the 3 counts. That means he's going away. They've remanded him into custody. What does all this mean?
Yeah, I mean, I know this has been complicated. I've tried to explain it numerous times. We've done it here on this show, Chris. The DA filed 3 counts knowing they needed 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that based on the questions they were asking, that the jury seemed to be having some issues with count 3, Jane Doe 3.
Right.
And, that is a complex one. Jane Doe 3 was in a relationship with Danny Masterson for 6 years. She obviously went to the police based on something that happened to her in December 2001. But Masterson was actually facing charges on something that had happened to her a month earlier in November 2001. That was very complicated, very difficult for the jury in the first trial, and it was again this time. It's a shame that they couldn't quite reach a unanimous verdict on her count. We were told that they had gone from 5 guilty to 7 to finally 8, and they read 8-4, and they felt that they just couldn't make any more movement. So that was the one disappointment today. But let me just tell you a little bit about how the day progressed. When we first got there, we just got 4 days off, and the jury had taken so much time, we got to the date of the evidentiary hearing. This is really important sort of side story to this whole Masterson trial. And that is the question, how did the prosecution's redacted discovery material, the emails and photos and text messages, very private information that they had to turn over to the defense, then end up in the hands of the Church of Scientology, which is not a party to this case? So I got to tell you, Chris, when I got to court, I usually go to the cafeteria and have a cup of coffee and relax for a few minutes. And who's there but Tom Mesereau?
Right.
Sean Hawley had all but pinned this on, Mesereau and maybe his co-counsel, Sharon Applebaum.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting for me to see him there. And then when I got up to the 9th floor, I not only saw him, but also Sharon Applebaum, and they each had attorneys of their own.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you how serious this is, right? So I was looking forward to some really interesting action. Well, it turns out that yesterday, when we were not in court, the judge had called up the 4 lead attorneys, and they had talked about, maybe we shouldn't have this hearing while the jury is still deliberating.
Right.
And so they decided to put it back a week. But just to show you how serious it is, not only did Mesereau and Applebaum have attorneys with them, but also Applebaum and her attorney were talking about how they were coming from San Diego. Could they just call it in on WebEx? And the judge said no. So I think, the judge and the prosecutors are taking this very seriously, but we're going to have to wait a week. So then we just went back to waiting, Chris. And so we were sitting, 3-4 of us reporters were back to the routine, just sitting in the back row, nothing to do. But it wasn't too much longer. We heard that double buzz from the jury. I don't know, it was like 10:30 or 10:50, something like that. And what then happens is, in fact, when this double buzz occurred, there were just 2 or 3 of us reporters and nobody else, no bailiff, no clerk. The clerk walks in and I said, hey, what's the buzzing about? You don't like buzzing. But the clerk didn't know. So I informed the clerk that the jury was buzzing. So the clerk then went back and he returned to the courtroom, and I said, so do they have a question? Because two buzzes usually indicates that they have a question. And he was real weird about it. He was kind of like, well, they don't have a question yet. And we're like, what does that mean? But then he said that there was another 2 buzzes. He went back, and this time he said, okay, the attorneys are coming here at 1:30, and then we'll have the question. Yeah. And then he kicked us out. He kicked us out early. So that's, Chris, that's when I knew this was big, whatever it was. And I'll be honest, I thought it was a hung jury. Some other people thought so too. And then when we got back from lunch and I saw the Mastersons in the hallway, they seemed pretty buoyant. I think maybe they thought it was a hung jury also.
I saw a video of Masterson walking back in with his cup of coffee or whatever, you know, and I was like, wow, he looks pretty chill for what's about to happen, you know.
They all look pretty chill.
Yeah.
And so they finally let us in, and now it was packed because they'd seen our tweets and stuff, and a lot of people had come, you know, to see this. And then the judge said it. She says that we got a note from the jury. They have settled on 2 verdicts, but they're hung on a 3rd. And I was like, wow. And I instantly thought of all the readers and viewers who have been telling us, Chris, maybe they have 2 counts done and they're just stuck on a 3rd. You were right. I was skeptical of that. I will admit that.
Yep.
You were right if you were saying that.
Yep.
So she said, okay, we're going to read them right now. So the jury came in, they handed over the forms, and that's when we learned that it was guilty on count 1, guilty on count 2.
Right.
Then she quizzed it. And also, you'll see a notation I put in there that they'd also said yes to multiple. Again, the only way they can bring these charges after 20 years is as an enhancement called California's one strike law, so that not only does the jury have to find him guilty of 2, but also, you know, check off the box that says, and yes, it's multiple.
Right.
So that's what that is, okay?
Right.
So he's guilty on 1, guilty on 2, and they checked yes on both of those. It just means there's multiple, more than 1. They got that. But they're hung in the 3rd. So then she quizzed them about that, and we learned about the number of votes and that kind of thing. So then came the decision about what she was going to do about it. And I had to tell you, Chris, I've been talking to, I don't know, for years, to people who were telling me they're sure that he'll get to sit out until sentencing. But not too long ago, I sat down next to a veteran reporter there, covers everything at that courthouse. And I asked her about that, and she said, no way. He will be taken into custody if it's guilty. There's no way the judge would allow him to remain out on violent felonies like this.
Right.
So sure enough, she started talking about him being remanded, and I looked over, and there's a sight I don't know if I ever expected to see, Chris, but a bailiff had walked up behind Danny and was handcuffing him right there. And then we heard this sound, this otherworldly sound, this wailing sound, and I realized it was Bijou, and she was crying. And Judge Olmedo asked her if she could keep her composure, or she was going to have to leave the courtroom, but she was quiet.
Right.
So then Judge Olmedo did allow Cohen, defense Cohen, argue about why he should not be in custody, and he was saying because it's been more than 20 years since these incidents, he's clearly not a danger now, and that they could look into electronic monitoring or house arrest. And then she said, based on the nature of these crimes, the potential sentence, he is a flight risk.
Yeah. And
she ordered him remanded, and they took him out of the courtroom.
And I thought that was, of course, the smart move. You know, because he's life in prison, definitely a flight risk.
So let's go through that. So because these counts are part of this California one strike law, they carry penalties of 15 to life each, and there's two. So now he is looking at 30 years to life in prison. How much of a sentence he actually gets is up to Judge Olmedo.
Right.
Yeah, Danny's
Right.
probably not got the best judge for that. I have a feeling she's gonna throw the book at him. So that's what he's looking at, 30 to life. Now she asked the defense that she knows they want to make motions. Of course, they're going to try to, reverse all this or whatever. And Cohen said August 4th. So, Danny's cooling his heels at least until August 4th. There's nothing scheduled between now and then. So that was it. She excused the jury. Most of the gallery left. I stayed back with a couple reporters because I was typing stuff up, and the Mastersons were taking it hard. They were taking it really hard, that whole family. Eventually, the deputy then asked us reporters to leave. I assume they let the Mastersons go out a different way. The reporters were all trying to get statements. The DA apparently didn't want to give a statement. A couple of the Jane Does did through their attorneys later. And I know that some of the reporters were trying to find a juror to talk to. I just decided to go out of the courthouse and just make a little video and put my thoughts together about this whole thing. I mean, I got to say, the number one thing on my mind is what these women have gone through.
Yeah.
All these years, not just the many years since these incidents happened, but specifically in the last 7 years since they came forward to the LAPD and endured terrible investigating, a DA's office that took a long time to make a decision, and then sliming by, Masterson's folks and Scientology, constant harassment, which is also the subject of a civil trial. And hey, it's just hitting me right now, Chris. Not only does this help that civil lawsuit, but all these other agencies looking at this stuff now have no more excuses. FBI, State Attorney General, whoever. Now is the time. You've got to convict. Also, now that he's convicted, Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 can now file lawsuits against Danny for raping them. Not that he has any money left at this point, but so a lot more is going to happen. We're going to have a sentencing eventually. We got the evidentiary hearing next week, but what a landmark day, Chris! Oh my goodness,
huge! I am beside myself right now. I hadn't realized, you don't realize how tense you get over this stuff over the weeks and months, and you're reminding me, of course, that it took, wasn't it like a year or two for the DA office to even decide to prosecute this case? I mean, we were sitting on the former LA DA's debt. 3 years. Wow.
3 years.
Jesus. Yeah. I mean,
the DA had this case in April 2017, and they filed charges in June 2020.
Wow. I mean, it was just, we were just so beside ourselves with every single step of this thing. And then, of course, with the first thing and the mistrial, and then what's going to happen, and everything being up in the air. It's been quite a journey. It's been quite a thing. But I am most excited about all the things this now opens up in terms of not only the things we know about, but maybe some of the stuff you and I have conjectured about that we don't know everything about. That grand jury investigation, FBI looking into Scientology, maybe, because we were thinking, I was certainly thinking, this thing, if this flies, that gives them wings. And if this doesn't...
Right. I mean, look, as of today, Danny Masterson is a convicted serial rapist.
Exactly.
And so now who's going to take a look at why this guy was protected for all these years and the things that Scientology did to protect him? Somebody's got to look at that. And I tell you, it's just been so frustrating knowing that I know these other agencies are interested, but are they going to do something? Well, now they no longer have an excuse for waiting.
Exactly. Exactly. And these guys know how to bring cases. They know what they're doing. So we hope that they bring that to this. Somebody asked, what do you think Miscavige is doing right now? I think he's chewing the rug. I think he is beside himself right now. And I'll tell you, I'll bet you Tom Cruise is too. I'll bet you they're shitting their pants right now over this.
Well, there are going to be a number of people being asked what they knew and when they knew it. I think some of Danny's That 70s Show co-stars maybe getting some phone calls from media. And yeah, how quickly before Scientology, I don't know. Are they going to say something about, he's no longer a member and they kicked him out? I don't know. They have stuck by this guy in a way that I think surprised most people. But what is Scientology going to do now?
Well, I'll bet you common wisdom on their side. I'll bet you, not common, I'll bet you the collective wisdom with the attorneys and Miscavige and the various people they consulted on this. I'll bet you, especially with, the reaction we saw, that none of them thought this was actually going to happen. I'll bet you they were absolutely sure he was going to walk from this. 20-year-old charges, conflicting testimony, blah, blah, blah. No way they're going to get a conviction on this. I'm sure they were assured all the way back from Messero, this is practically open and shut. We're going to go through all these motions, but there's no way. And yet here we are. So, because this also, of course, does call into question. You mentioned last time we talked about, how the jury is determining the truth here. The jury is determining the facts of what happened. And that includes the facts of not only Masterson being a serial rapist, but Scientology covering it up. That is also factually part of this case. And names were named, events were described, policies were discussed. There was an expert witness on Scientology in this case. They are so far from blameless on this thing. And now it's legal record. And this is probably some of the most serious criminal charges since Snow White that we've seen against Scientology.
Right. No, you make an excellent point, and that is, I'm sure Scientology will disagree, but this man was found guilty in part because the Church of Scientology tried to keep this from happening, and it helped explain why these women, it took so long for this case to get to court.
Yeah.
So this jury is putting a stamp of truth on all this testimony about women that were told that they were, women that were punished for being victims. That Scientology punishes you if you are a victim. Scientology will put you through an ethics handling if you dare to turn in a celebrity. That Scientology will force you to sign a gag order or risk being declared. All of those things were testified to in this case, and a jury found that it was factual. So that, you're right, that is a really tough thing for the Church of Scientology. They will deny that this had anything to do with them or the guilt. But that's going to be all material that they're going to be able to use in the civil case.
Exactly. I'm thinking at this point, they are probably upping their reserve account of how much they've put aside to settle that case. And look, there's no question. I mean, Danny's got to be drained at this point after 2 trials and after all these years of doing this. The civil case is all about Scientology. That's what I'm saying.
Fighting these plaintiffs.
Yep.
And if somebody's going to write a check to make that case go away, it's going to be the Church of Scientology.
And that's what I'm thinking right now is they probably are like expanding their concept because I'll bet you if this goes to a jury on that civil case, they're going to come in hot with a substantial judgment against Scientology.
Well, David Miscavige would never allow it to go to a trial. So, but the pretrial stuff is going to be really interesting in that case.
Yep.
Scientology has already said it's going to file an anti-slap in that case. So that'll be that'll be in June, I believe. There's a date already set for that.
That's right.
Scientology will come in with an anti-slap, and that'll take the next year.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
It'll be, the documents will be fascinating. What both sides are saying, and it's what I'm looking forward to in that case are some details about what these women have gone through, what they accuse Scientology of, and what the DA and the LAPD has been able to corroborate about those things. They've been hinting that they've got evidence to back these women up. So that's going to heat up real soon.
That's right.
In fact, that'll heat up before we hear about Danny again. August 4th, again, is that next set of a hearing for some motions. I don't know exactly when the sentencing date is. I don't think she talked about that yet.
Okay.
But right away, though, evidentiary hearing next week. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get some answers on that. You know, another thing I was just thinking is it's going to be a lot harder now, a lot harder for there to be a public connection between even the Hollywood division of the LAPD and the Church of Scientology now. This could actually serve to cut some of those, at least publicly. We know that they operate behind the scenes. We do know this, and we know that they are effective at it. They've been doing it for decades. But the very visible public partnership between the Church of Scientology and the LAPD, I mean, if anybody in the LAPD has any media savvy at this point,
well, I mean, we just hope that the other press remembers that one of the features of this case was that when the women came forward to the LAPD in 2016, they were, even though the location of the incidents were in the Hollywood division, they were told that it would secretly be taken care of by a downtown division, because even the LAPD knew that the Hollywood division was hopelessly co-opted by the Church of Scientology. We hope that, you know, going forward, the other media remember that. And, you know, I mean, Scientology and LAPD are still doing things together. And this should, you know, really throw that into question. I hope the LA Times looks at that.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I'm saying is I hope that there's some more exposure of these connections. And perhaps if they're really, truly, I mean, maybe this is too much to hope for, probably is, but I'm just going to say it out loud anyway, is if the FBI is truly looking into this or truly going to move forward on something, maybe those, you know, feelers will go into these law enforcement agencies as well and deal with that Hollywood division connection. We can hope, you know. I have some commenters about how they're probably having a bit of a shred party right now at International Management of Scientology, right? I'm sure that is true. Because believe me, guys, I can't do anything with this information because for me, for my position and what I understand legally, it would really be tantamount to hearsay since I didn't witness it directly. But I'm telling you, I know of 3 or 4 other cases of this kind of sexual assault covered up by the Church of Scientology, even including minors. I know of people who went to the RPF for that. I know who they are. I mean, and if I know, a bunch of other people know because I wasn't even supposed to know about that stuff. So this is there, and there are records of this. There's information on this, and this can be pursued. So if they were raided, let's say, and those folder tanks, were gone through, that kind of thing, all kinds of stuff could come out on what Scientology has been actively covering up.
But the number one thing you need in this kind of a case are victims who are willing to go through this whole awful process. I just want to bring it back to these Jane Does again. They knew they were getting into a very difficult situation. It's been hell for 6 years for them. Yeah. And 2 trials, having to testify 3 times under oath at the preliminary hearing and then 2 trials. And, and being harassed the whole time. So, but look, they really deserve our admiration for what they've been through, getting through this. And I can tell you what they were focused on is they really believed that Danny Masterson deserved this kind of punishment. And so I only wish they could have been in the courtroom and got to see him being handcuffed. That was quite a moment.
I'll bet. That's what I wanted to ask you about that. What did he look like? I mean, you've been seeing him. I saw him real close in the hallway. As we were coming back,
I was real close by him, Bijou, Will Masterson, Chris Wadhams, Carol Masterson, and I gotta tell you, I thought they felt like they had this in the bag. Maybe they had been told something and were just very good actors. But I just didn't perceive anything from Danny that he was walking into such a tough situation.
Right.
And you know, when the time came, he stood up, they put the handcuffs on him, he walked out. There was nothing. It was Bijou, like I said, who had the emotional moment and wailed and cried. As I said later, the rest of the family was just really, you could see they were really emotional. But before that, I don't know if they knew, because they just seemed like, you know, I think they thought they were walking in to see a hung jury again.
That's right. That's right. If
I
not,
might be wrong. They might have been known something. I don't know.
If not an acquittal, even. So, in terms of Scientology's reaction to this, it's a little hard, and the only reason it is, you know, when Reed Slatkin got busted years and years ago, if you remember, I mean, they threw that guy under the bus immediately, and not only because of the criminal charges, but because he had screwed over so many Scientologists in the process, as well as, you know, some non-Scientologists. So I don't think they really had much of an issue with declaring that guy straight away. Masterson, the only reason I sort of hesitate a little bit about what are they going to do in terms of his status as a Scientologist is because of the web of connections that are involved.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Can they afford to denounce Danny and risk losing this large clan of Scientologists? I don't know.
Exactly. I think there's going to be an awful lot of people being pulled into the church and, you know, sat down and like, okay, well, here's what's going to happen. And because pretty clearly common sense would be declare the guy. I mean, that's the whole point of a declare, is somebody's being a criminal, being an antisocial, being a psychotic, you know, you disavow them. Scientology should clearly do that with Danny Masterson. But this is a big tribe we're talking about. The Masterson clan is not a couple people. And when you bring in the 70s show and all those connections and Ashton Kutcher and these other people, you know, I just don't know. It's really hard to know what they're going to do. They are, after all, a destructive cult. So,
well, that's what we'll be looking for. We'll be looking for a Corinne Powell quote, and you and I should look at it very carefully and take it apart a little bit. And let me just point out something I'm already seeing some questions about. Look, the DA filed 3 counts knowing they needed 2. They got the 2. This guy's facing 30 years to life in prison. So no, there's not going to be any attempt to retry that 3rd count. It's over. It's done.
Right.
And, you know, I'm sure Jane Doe 3 is disappointed that they couldn't reach a verdict on her case, but they did get the 2 counts they needed, and he's looking at 30 to life. So we're all done, people. The next question is, what kind of a sentence does he get? Of course, Cohen is going to be filing all kinds of things about, you know, having the verdict thrown out or juror misconduct. I don't know what he'll come up with something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think the fact that this jury this was day 8 of deliberations over 2 weeks, and nobody can accuse them of not being thorough.
That's right.
Right? I mean, they must have looked at everything 3 different ways. So, you know, hey, Cohen has until August 4th to come up with something, and he will, and he'll try to get this thing thrown out, and then we'll get to see what sort of sentence Olmedo puts on it. So we got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. Now, to be clear, if I understand this right, and I wanted to ask you about this as well, is the 30 to life, that's according to the legal structure that's been put together for the law. As I understand it, the judge has pretty wide discretion in terms of how they can interpret or judge, you know, sentence somebody. But we're not particularly thinking, there's no reason to indicate that she's going to go for less than 30 years at this point, yeah?
I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I think there are factors that go into how she puts together a sentence like that. I will. That's something I'm going to be doing is asking some people what they think, what kind of a range they think he's actually going to get from her.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I think he's not going to get a break from this judge. I think very seriously took very seriously these allegations from these women. She took very seriously what they had to say about Scientology. Obviously, Judge Olmedo really researched this case and knows it well. And so I don't see her as being particularly lenient on this. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, fair enough. I'm also seeing a couple comments, just since you can't see them here on the YouTube, of Aaron apparently reported that Danny and his siblings have been dead filed. Interesting piece of information if true, because that would mean that's it. They cut ties with him. You know, because if you're dead filed in Scientology, that means you're done. You're not connected anymore. We don't contact you. We don't call you. We don't reach out to you. You're dead to us. Don't know if that's true, but that's apparently what he was saying. So we'll see what pans out on this. At which point the damage control from within the church would be, okay, salvage as many connections as possible. You know, the Masterson clan or the Masterson siblings, or, you know, it was those guys who were involved and they covered it up. And we were just taken for the ride along with everybody else, is how they might spin that to all of those connections. I could see them very easily doing that to try to minimize, you know, the internal damage.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to see. You know, again, time will prove whether that's true or not. Yeah, good guys. So this sort of phase of this whole thing is over. Damn.
You know, it's
Damn.
it's hard for me even to put it in perspective. I mean, 6 years and 3 months ago, first story. And that very first story at the bunker was about how these women were really upset at how badly the LAPD was handling things.
Right.
And I think, you know, that publicity helped get them a new detective. And that new detective was much better. But there were still issues all along. There were issues with, you know, what Danny's side was doing. I don't know. It was but I really want to hand it to both Deputy DA Reinhold Mueller, and especially Deputy DA Ariel Anson,
Yep.
who stepped up her role in this second trial. She was terrific. Both of them were so much stronger on their opening and closing statements. And, you know, what was my criticism of the first trial? That the prosecution could have told a better narrative. Well, they put together a very strong narrative for this retrial. And I said it at closing arguments that I didn't think the DAs could have done a much better job than they did. These Jane Does really got a great effort out of these DAs, and you know, apparently made the difference. So got to hand it to them. They really did a much better job this second time than the first time. And the women themselves on the stand, I'm thinking back now to time during cross-examination when they really let Cohen have it, you know. They were ready for him the second time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about some of the things Jane Doe 2 and Jane Doe 1 said that really kind of hammered him. So, hey, he's good at what he does. He and Sean Hawley both did some excellent cross-examination. But, you know, I think the jury just looked at this guy and realized, you know, 3 women, 4 women, same MO. And as Deputy DA Ariel Anson said, it all starts with a drink. And that's, you know, that's what made it so awful, is that, as Mueller said, these incidents took planning. These were not spontaneous things. He had to figure out how to put the stuff in the drink, to give them the drink, get them to drink it, and then attack them. And they're brutal, brutal incidents we had to listen to over and over again. But this time it got through to the jury.
That's right.
30 to life, man. Wow.
I know, right? And this was actually really good because this was the case we kind of expected them to make, and the prep and the work done. This is what we should have had the first time around, and that's what we got this time. And it really showed. I definitely want to back up everything you've been saying. I think I don't think it's an overstatement. I actually don't. To use the word heroic when it comes to these victims and what they've been through and the true ordeal every one of them have been through in going through this thing. And they really got the proper representation this time, and the case was really made. I don't really think the first time was sort of like a practice run or something practically. Now, I've been asked, there's people asking about this dead file thing, so I actually have the policy here. So let me read a couple sections out of this, because y'all might find it kind of interesting in terms of what are we talking about? Why not just declare the person suppressive? The policy on dead file is this: ethics files shall include a dead file. So in Scientology, you have ethics files on people. You have their confessional files where they admit to stuff, but then you have an ethics file where all the reports and everything get put on a person. And this shall include what's called a dead file. This file includes all persons who write nasty or choppy letters to an org or its personnel. Rather than go to the trouble of issuing a suppressive person order or even investigating, we assign writers of choppy letters to the dead file. When their area is interbulated or we want to locate a suppressive, we can always consult our dead file for possible candidates and then investigate and issue an order. So that's kind of what the dead file is. The actual action is simply to cut communication. That's it. They are dead to Scientology. That's what the dead file indicates. So that's what it means internally in Scientology. It's as good as being declared. So clarify that for people. Okay. I think we've talked about this.
Okay. Well, next week, evidentiary hearing. August 4th, defense motions, and then we'll see about sentencing. I think I will be here in Los Angeles next week for the evidentiary hearing. I might go home for a few days between now and then. I might stay here. I don't know. It's like, costs money to fly, Chris. But
especially now, yeah.
I just want to thank the people that have been supporting me here, letting me stay for free, driving a car. I've had so much great support. But I wanted to be in the courtroom every day. And we were there every day. So I'm just glad I was there to hear the clerk say those words.
Big time.
Amazing. And then to see him handcuffed. What an experience. Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing. You were right there, feet away from him. That's why I was like so keen to have this conversation. I want to thank, by the way, the super chats that came in. I very, very much appreciate the support on this. And I am going to definitely plug Tony's Substack right now, because that is the source of information on this entire thing from the very beginning. Tony has been transcribing, word per word, what's been going on in this thing from the beginning and all the way through to the end. And kudos, man. Thank you for doing that.
You bet. Thank you very much, Chris. TonyOrtega.substack.com. Sign up for free emails. I'm going to keep covering this thing, and we got other cases happening. So TonyOrtega.substack.com. All right, Chris. Thank you.
You bet. All right, folks. Support the channel. Support our work. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. All right. Booyah.